AD carries are truly a rare breed of players in League of Legends. Given the role's penchant for being among the highest if not the highest damage dealer on their team and the class having lower self-sufficiency than others, they tend to get a divisive rap among the community, not just in terms of the champions but the attitude people have towards ADC players as well, which I spent a great deal of time talking about in my video dedicated to the role. It isn't really their fault per se, not entirely, it's just the way League is designed creates an environment that encourages that type of behavior. But for some inexplicable reason, a number of marksmen and by extension their player bases get disproportionately more of a negative reputation than others. No one really has any bad blood towards Xayah, Sivir, or Jinx, but I think they sure as hell believe the game would be better off had Draven, Vayne, and Twitch not existed. Twitch in particular is one of the only marksmen to receive the same amount of vitriol as Vayne, having a substantially higher number of detractors against the character than just about any other AD carry. In today's episode of Why Everyone Hates, we're gonna be talking about the Stink Rat to find out just what about him, or possibly his one tricks, leads to so many people not liking him. Twitch is a rather unusual member of his class. Despite a fairly traditional moveset being one of the first ADCs in the game's history, he plays a lot less straightforward than even the more eccentric marksmen of today. The central win condition of the ADC role is very cut and dry: deal damage. It doesn't matter how you deal damage or who you deal it to. Your goal is to output as much DPS as humanly possible until the enemy team is wiped out. Either that or you die trying. This all-or-nothing approach to the game is partly the reason why ADC players develop anime main character syndrome, with their only contribution to a team being their damage output. You feel as if your team should invest manpower and attention towards enabling you to do your job so that you can return the favor by winning the game for them. Coupling that with how dependent they are on their team due to lacking the same protection or mobility that other champions carry, and it becomes a very symbiotic love-hate relationship between the marksman and their team. In a number of ways, Twitch diverges from that running narrative, while at the same time adhering to it to an almost extreme degree, which actually brings us to the first reason why people hate him. ADCs typically cooperate with their team to benefit from their support and protection. Meanwhile, Twitch on the other hand enjoys marching to the beat of his own drum, acting in a more erratic and volatile fashion. Thematically, it makes sense. He was a sewer rat mutated and deformed by all the chemicals and likely radioactive waste pouring throughout Zaun. Likewise, he plays in a radioactive fashion, unpredictable and unstable. You can probably figure out where I'm going with this. Twitch does have the same end goal of wanting to blast everything in his way, but because of how he was designed, the best way to do that is to play in a very unpredictable fashion, since trying to battle in a straightforward way fundamentally goes against not just the champion's personality, but also the whole reason you're playing him to begin with. Twitch plays more like an assassin or a hit-and-run champion than an actual marksman. His gameplay consists on catching the enemy off guard, hitting them hard and fast, and then getting away before they have the time to collect themselves and mount a response. That is, if they're even alive to do so. Unlike most assassins who play for a rushdown approach, Twitch is in the same group as Evelynn and Shaco. They're not particularly known for their speed or evasion, rather their penchant for playing dirty with surprise attacks. Ambush is a 10 to 14 second camouflage that gives him bonus movement speed while close to enemy champions. Upon breaking stealth, he gets a long-lasting attack speed buff, and if a target affected by his passive dies, the cooldown resets. The general premise is to sneak up to a target, gun them down, then sneak away. Very similar to how Evelynn likes to play. How this contributes to people disliking Twitch is quite simple. It's the exact opposite of how you'd expect a marksman to play, which can prove disadvantageous not just for the enemy team, but even potentially your own. Broadly speaking, stealth is one of the most hated mechanics in League because of how difficult it is to properly battle against it. Vision may very well be the most powerful combat element in the game. The overwhelming majority of interactions in a given match are predicated on your ability to see the enemy team coming by usage of wards and your own line of sight. Likewise, a big part of gaining advantage against the opposing team is to make your own team as difficult to see as possible, hence why so much emphasis gets placed on vision control and denial. By its very nature, stealth allows the champion to effectively ignore an entire facet of the game's experience and a universal weapon and defense both teams have against each other. In other words, all stealth champions get a baseline amount of backlash more than non-stealth champions purely because you can't use the most foundational mechanic in League to deal with them. Having the element of surprise forces you to always assume Twitch can appear anywhere at any time to blow up your team, and when accounting for the marksman class's ability to output some of if not the highest DPS in the game, that can be pretty terrifying. At the very least for the likes of Shaco or Evelynn, you can rest easy knowing they can only practically destroy 1 or 2 people at most of their initial attack. Twitch on the other hand can gun down your entire team in a matter of seconds. That kind of power given to a champion who's invisible to the naked eye until right before he decides to attack is a dangerous power indeed. Sure, potentially Jinx or Kog'Maw can outpump a Twitch, but at least you can see those two coming. You can't see Twitch coming unless he trips over a pink ward, nor can you try to hide behind a frontline base. Twitch players often do not play for a front-to-back approach. Usually they go for a flank angle or back to front. While your entire team is going at each other, a good Twitch approaches a team fight the same way as Shaco or Evelyn does. They aim for your blind spot. If you try to hide behind your Scion, Twitch will attack from the side. And on the rare occasions he decides to play front to back, he can still blast you through your tank with the help of his ultimate. Spray and Pray adds an extra layer of fear factor when fighting Twitch. At the press of a button, this guy not only gains an 850 attack range on his autos, but he also gets a full completed item worth of bonus AD and the ability for his attacks to penetrate beyond their primary target, effectively giving him even more attack range. I believe the full distance of his bullets becomes 1100, functionally doubling his effective attack range. That's also the reason why Twitch players often approach a teamfight unconventionally. They're trying to ascertain the perfect angle to line up the entire enemy team and blow them up. Once again, most other stealth users have to fight up close and personal, giving every champion the ability to fight back even if they're caught off guard. Against Twitch though, he has the ability to jump scare you from not just any spot, but from a spot too far away for most champions to counterattack. An 850 attack range is far enough away for him to be out of reach by most point-and-click dashes, and he can also land 2 or 3 autos by the time it takes a 550 range marksman to get close enough to strike him, at which point they might just die trying to do so. Since he can stay invisible for a long period of time, Twitch can wait until a few seconds after a teamfight breaks out and the enemy team burns their critical abilities to then capitalize on the brief moment of vulnerability to murder everyone in sight. In fact, that very option can be weaponized against the enemy team as well. Just as people are scared of walking up or starting a fight until they know for certain where the enemy Fiddlesticks is hiding, people can be scared to commit to a fight if they don't know where the enemy Twitch is. His team can use the psychological warfare to their advantage. It also doesn't really matter which build option the Twitch player goes for, they both have the same win condition. Going AD puts more damage into his autos, whereas going AP empowers the W slow and his bleed and contaminate damage. It's the same end result. Twitch wants to attack as many targets as possible with his autos. That aforementioned ability for him to play either full AP or full AD makes it hard for you to properly itemize against him as well. Against most assassins, even the stealth ones, the best way to deal with them is to extend your time to react to them as much as possible. In layman's terms, get tankier. Rengar or Evelyn's pressure severely diminishes if you build even one anti-burst item, be it a Death Stance, Kinda Grukern, what have you. However, against Twitch, I'll remind you he's an ADC. ADCs in the late game have enough DPS to break through even a Ninja Tabi and another armor item. It might take longer, but my point is they have the ammo to do so. Ninja Tabi and Death Stance might give you enough armor to survive a Rengar one-shot combo, but it sure as hell won't hold up all that well against a full crit LDR Twitch pumping 1000 damage every auto. You need to be a Rammus or Malphite to withstand that kind of firepower. Battling AP Twitch is a challenge too, as the result of Deadly Venom being true damage. At full stacks, he does a total of 180 base plus over 100% AP in true damage, which in the late game can be anywhere between 800 to 1000. I mean, don't get me wrong, magic resist items often come with a bit of help, but it's not like you can ask a squishy major marksman to build a Kinda Grukern. Overall, he's one of the more annoying marksmen to fight. Technically, he's got the same strengths and weaknesses of his peers, but the presence of ambush affords him considerably more latitude when navigating a fight. Twitch, alongside Kai'Sa and Samira, is one of the few ADCs capable of fighting back to front, ignoring the enemy frontline altogether, and his ability to blow up entire teams makes him significantly more dangerous in the mid to late game than a single target assassin like Evelyn or Shaco. True to being a rat, he basically wins by fighting dirty, aka chasing you. It would be one thing if that was all there is to this guy, but Twitch gets a measurable amount of hate from his own team at times, and it ties back to what I said earlier about the most optimal way to play Twitch being unpredictability. You have to be capricious to all hell to throw the enemy team off guard, however, in the process you might also throw your team off guard as well. A marksman that plays like an assassin while still by and large being a marksman in terms of attributes and properties presents a fundamental incongruity from a playstyle point of view. A common scenario you'll find Twitch running into is when he tries to go for a sneaky flank angle to wipe away the enemy team. Unfortunately, his support, bless their heart, tries to follow him to provide any utility or bust they can, like any well-intended support would do. In doing so, they might end up inadvertently divulging Twitch's position. A perceptive enemy team could get an idea of where Twitch's general location might be if his support is careless enough to follow him too closely. Mind you, it's not pragmatically wrong for his support to follow Twitch while he's invisible, but Twitch players have a tendency to operate without much consideration for their team, choosing to play however they best see fit. Occasionally, that playstyle can conflict with what the team is trying to do. Anecdotally speaking, I've experienced many games where my Twitch was trying way too hard to go for a super crazy flank instead of just playing front to back, which remember he could still do. He doesn't always have to make plays, but then every fight Twitch gets blown up because he goes in melee range trying to spray and pray on everyone, or he spends too much time running around looking for a flank that by the time he finds one, his team already lost the fight. Twitch can also potentially play into 4 of the 5 roles in the game: jungle, mid, ADC, and support. Technically yes, he is viable in those roles and can even be decent at it if you play him well. The problem is most of the time people aren't too big a fan of him being played in a role besides ADC. Twitch is only playable in those roles by way of a coincidental benefit that comes from his kit, not that he's actually meant to be played there. For example, he can play as a jungler thanks to his early game clear being just passable enough to not be garbage and the obvious gank potential afforded to him by way of ambush. He can play support thanks to his ability to roam and cheese a few kills in top and mid, and he can play mid because by going EP Twitch your wave clear isn't the worst out there, as well as once again the opportunity to roam. That's about as far as it gets. Objectively, he's suboptimal. Expectedly, people don't exactly feel too reassured about having a suboptimal jungle, mid, or support, no doubt contributing to people disliking Twitch. In my lore video on Zaun, I talked about how the strength of Zaunite champions can be found in their propensity to cause chaos. Zaunites are at their strongest when a game is crazy and volatile, contrasting from Piltover, whose champions are at their best when everything is under control and in order. Solo queue's inherent volatility as a result of teams being unable to verbally communicate offers an advantage to Zaunites like Twitch, who's at his best when he can pick off the enemy team one by one, or wipe them all out when they're not paying attention. Conversely though, Twitch and by extension his player base have been known to struggle with cooperating with their team. Being an unstable element may lead to extreme highs, but it can just as easily go the other direction. A possible theory behind the "f you, I'm gonna 1v9" mentality could be attributed to L9, a notorious group of high elo players that made themselves known in EU West for their impressive mechanics and talent for literally 1v9ing games. I'll give credit where it's due, L9 players definitely know a thing or two. But they were also infamously toxic and known to boost accounts a lot. Not sure if they have a history of inting games as well, but either way they were a club of challenger players who were massive dickheads but actually had the skill to back it up. One member in particular goes by the name of Rat IRL, arguably one of the best Twitch players in the entire world. Putting it simply, Rat IRL was to Twitch what Tyler 1 was to Draven back in 2016. A noteworthy amount of Twitch players modeled their playstyle and attitude after Rat IRL, which ended up getting exacerbated by the erratic playstyle the champion inherently has. Like with any situation where low elo players try to emulate a high elo player without understanding the thought process behind it, it tends to result in more failure than victory. Also, I'm not entirely sure if this is an isolated instance, but I can't tell you how many games I've played with a Twitch on my team who spent the entire early to mid game practically running it down and making the game way harder than it had to be, but we busted our ass to keep the game competitive. Then in the late game he pulled off a good teamfight ultimate or made a good play, and just because of that one fight he ended up taking all the credit for carrying the game and calling us bad even though he was the reason our team was on the back foot to begin with. I'll concede, Twitch is a late game hyper carry. He doesn't really have the best early game since he only has one damaging tool, and that damaging tool depends on his attack speed. Under no circumstances do I expect a Twitch to outduel a Draven, Kai'Sa, Lucian, or Samira. But you guys know what I mean, right? It's the attitude. Something about Twitch makes a lot of his players just insufferable. I really don't know why. Maybe it's the type of gambling addiction or something where Twitch makes you gamble everything on an all or nothing teamfight angle, and when you don't get an opportunity you force the issue, which ends up just leading to the Twitch player inting games. Whatever the case, whether because of the playstyle or the legacy of L9 or both, on average there are more negative experiences with a Twitch player than positive. The funny thing is, compared to other champions in this series, Twitch is never a balanced nightmare. At worst he's annoying to play against, but he's never an overpowered pick, which only further leads me to believe people dislike Twitch more because of his player base and not actually the champion. From what I heard though, the Wild Rift community really doesn't like this guy. Regardless of which game you play though, definitely one of the more hated champions in League. What do you guys think about Twitch? Do you have a personal bias against him, or do you actually like the guy? Let me know in the comments down below. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you let to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why Everyone Hates episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.